Richards were a typical family. They were young. Darlie was a stay-at-home mom and was very involved with her children, and they were just a normal family.
When I went to sleep, everything was perfect. When I woke up, it's been a nightmare.
When you start out with Kathy Cruz, calling her a normal family, do you know who Kathy Cruz was married to before she started messing with the Darlie case? Do you know why Kathy Cruz speaks out for Darlie? Go ahead and figure that out and then get back with me.
Jones, and this is Kitchen Table Research, where we do the research so you don't have to. Today at KTR, we have special news. Our researcher, Johnson, who you've heard us talk about before, has decided to join us, and she's going to help present this 3-part special.
Yay.
So Johnson's also been obsessed with true crime her whole life and has a background in writing and criminal psychology. So she's going to bring her unique opinions. And she's also amazing at doing profiles, so we're really happy to have her on board. How you doing, Johnson? Are you out there? Can you hear me?
Hey, how's it going?
All right.
I'm here.
And guess what else Johnson has done for us? She's put together a website, and as soon as we have that information ready, we will definitely put it out there into the universe. But for now, we have put together evidentiary photos on our story section of our Instagram page, and we are also now live on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook and search Kitchen Table Research Podcast, you can follow along with the photos as we go. If you want to reach out to us directly or leave us a message, reach out to our email. It's kitchen.table.research@gmail.com. I'm really excited to present this case today, and so Johnson is going to lead us off.
So today we're going to tell you the story of Darlie Routier and what happened to her family on June 6, 1996. Her story is full of tragedy, betrayals, secrets, and a whole mess of conspiracies. So we made this a 3-part special. In this first episode, we're going to introduce you to the Routiers, or as I like to think of them, the Texan Kardashians.
Oh, God!
We're going to hear about the crime and its aftermath. In the second episode, we're going to reenact portions of the trial for you.
Probably shouldn't start out with referring to them as the Texas Kardashians, because we all know that Kardashian hid evidence in the O.J. case because he thought that O.J. was innocent. But by the middle of the trial, he knew he was guilty. Look at Kardashian's face when they read that verdict. So you're starting out by promoting a family who has covered for a killer. That's how you're starting out, right? With the Kardashians. Okay, let's move along.
This death penalty trial was a convoluted mess, so we'll do our best to present evidence and theories, both old and new, in the most unbiased way we can. In the third episode, we'll talk about the suspects, poke holes in the case, and speculate wildly. So settle in and listen to Joan set the scene of the 1990s U.S.
In October of 1994, a man was found not guilty for murdering his wife Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman, and he walked out a free man from a first-degree murder charge.
That's right. And the Kardashians, who you just promoted, their father was his best friend. Did you ever see him taking that bag away from the crime scene? I did. I saw that. Look again. Look at the look on his face when they read the verdict. He knew O.J. was guilty, and he covered for him. Facts.
That man is, of course, O.J. Simpson. This case was nationally televised 24/7 on Court TV, something that had never been done previously. This was one of the first big cases to rely on DNA evidence. O.J. Simpson was found not guilty, despite millions of people's opinions that O.J. was in fact guilty.
It wasn't an opinion. O.J.'s bloody fingerprints were found on that back gate over at the Bundy address. His bloody fingerprints were found there. Period.
Of killing Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. Did this bias future juries to convict more often? Were they fearing letting the guilty go free? A lot of people are influenced by the legal phrase, quote, not guilty. While the term means that there's reasonable doubt,
Not guilty does not mean you did not commit the crime.
the semantics make it feel otherwise. In the summer of 1995, Susan Smith drove her and her children into a lake. She maintained they were abducted and pleaded with the public for the return of her children. As days went by, her story began to unravel, and eventually, Susan would confess to the murders of her 2 children. She was found guilty and is currently in prison somewhere in the Southeast. Did this media sensation perhaps influence the Routier trial?
No. No, it didn't. The difference between Susan Smith and Darlie Routier is that 9 days after the crime, Susan Smith grew a conscience and she confessed. Couldn't live with herself.
Similar case happens in December of 1996 when a 6-year-old girl was found gagged and murdered in the basement of her family home. When the girl's father was asked why he obtained legal counsel so quickly, he said, and I quote, because of what happened to the woman in Texas. And he is referring to our case today, the Darlie Routier case.
Well, the thing of it is, whenever you're accused of a crime, you should lawyer up. You have every right to lawyer up.
Alright, let's start this case at the beginning, as we always do. Darlie was born on January 4th, 1970 in Pennsylvania, but I think she was a through and through Texas girl. Darlie's mom, who everyone called Mama Darlie, divorced Darlie's biological dad and married her stepfather, Denny Key, and the 3 moved to Lubbock, Texas. There...
Who the fuck is Denny Key? That's Robbie Key. Robbie Jean Key. Convicted of grand theft in 1991. Robbie Jean Key, the president of the Texas Corvette Collectors Club. Robbie Key, who had a hobby of collecting $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 Corvettes, parading around the towns in Texas, but telling you that they need your money to help free Darlie. All they had to do is sell a couple Corvettes, right? Robbie Jean Key, not Denny Key. Denny is Dennis Stahl. Dennis Stahl is the person who, on the stand, Darlie claimed was molesting her from the age 8 on. Well, Danelle, your friend, says he never did that. He's not a molester. In writing. So who's lying? Who's lying, Danelle or Darlie? because one of them is. Read the testimony.
Mama Darlie and Denny would have 2 more daughters named Dana and Danielle.
Now, Dennis Stahl, she does have 2 children with. There is no Denny Key. You start off within 5 minutes and 30 seconds of getting the fact wrong.
Darlie's biological dad stayed behind in Pennsylvania. So, if you can't already tell, there's going to be a lot of D names in this story.
There's actually, if you do the research, there's 4 Darlies in that family. 4 of them.
We're going to help you guys keep them separate, but we might get confused as well. So, if we do, we'll try and point it out. So, during Darlie's childhood and early adolescence, all we can...
She was molested by Danelle's father, it says in her testimony, from age 8 on. But Danelle says that didn't happen.
Find is that she had a good upbringing. She had family support, she loved her family, and Mama Darlie would say she was not only a great daughter, but would become a great mother as well.
She had great family support, right? Here's the family support that she had. She's being fondled and touched and molested by the stepfather. She tells her mother doesn't believe her. They don't turn him in, and to this day they protect him. To this day they'll say he didn't do that. But Darlie said he did. So let's talk a little bit more about that family upbringing, can we?
Well, she had never been in trouble with the law, and during our research, all we can find was a speeding ticket that happened about 6 months before the crime.
You didn't do any research about a speeding ticket 6 months before the crime. You just looked and saw that that's the only thing that she had ever been arrested for. That means nothing. Right? Let's talk about Darren's graduation party and the lie she told there.
Her stepfather, Denny Key, did try to...
That's not Denny Key.
touch her inappropriately as a child, we believe, about once.
Nope. He didn't try to. According to Darlie, the first time he did it was when she was 8. He didn't try. He did, according to Darlie. In her journal. I don't know why Denny did what he did to me.
But Darlie said something to Mama Darlie and had an open conversation within the family. The entire family were supportive during this time, and I think Darlie and Mama Darlie got some counseling. So
Darlie never got any counseling for that. Darlie did not get no counseling for that. Mama Darlie did. See, because if you do your research, you'll know that Darlie had never had any counseling as a youth.
We don't want to minimize this part of her childhood. September 15th, 1995. Darlie writes in her journal, quote, "I don't understand why Denny did it to me what he did. So it's very hard to try and forgive him. I know he must have had a dark secret that happened as a child, and I pray to the Lord that one day he will ask for true forgiveness for his own soul."
So years after what Denny Stahl, not Denny Key, had did to Darlie, years after that, it's still on her mind. I don't know why he did this. Imagine living with that confusion and that your mother didn't believe you. It was an open conversation's ass. Because Danelle tells me, nope, we don't talk about that. I don't know nothing about it. I don't want to touch that subject. I have her in messages when I try to talk to her about it. Said she didn't know nothing about it.
So like we said, Darlie had a fairly normal background.
That's not normal. It's not normal.
Darlie's a normal, happy, and healthy person. There's nothing in her background that points to a woman who would later go on to commit this heinous crime.
There was nothing in a lot of people's backgrounds before they snapped and committed a crime. It means nothing.
On our Robert O'Hare psychopathy test, which our listeners have heard us talk about before, Darlie has a lower score than 2 of us.
You can't score someone that you haven't met personally. Fuck out of here with that shit. Score me.
Out of the 3. So you want to guess who those 2 people are? At any rate, I need to go post our Robert O'Hare psychopathy to our Instagram. That way you guys can look at it and you guys can use the scale as well. Okay, let's go back to the story. So the Key family is now living in Lubbock. The town of Lubbock houses Texas Tech University, and so during the semester, lots of young people are living in town. At this time, Texas Tech was an agricultural school, and the town of Lubbock...
I can tell you now that Darlie Key was never married to anyone named Denny Key. Never.
...was fairly small, with a population of around 170,000. And that population has almost tripled to date, partly due to the school, Texas Tech. Jones and I both went to Texas Tech. Go Raiders! It was a fantastic school, and it looks beautiful with its stucco buildings. The architecture is done.
Thank you, Texas Tech. That's when you went there? You went there. Okay, thank you for that.
A Spanish style, and when dropped across a West Texas sunset, it truly is stunning. Jones has lived in Lubbock for quite a while longer than I have, but all in all, I mean, it's a college town. There's fun things to do.
Lubbock. All you gotta do is listen to people.
There's lots of climbing and recreational things to do there as well. It's a nice town to live in, despite what other people might say.
Lubbock is a great town to live in, or live close to. I live close to there. It's the home of Buddy Holly. I mean, really.
Enjoyed living in Lubbock, so not only is it beautiful, but the people are extremely friendly in Lubbock, especially when you're a person like Darlie. She wore short shorts and had a head full of bleach blonde hair. Darlie spent her early and teen years here, attending Monterey High School. At 15, Mama Darlie introduced her to 18-year-old Darren Routier. Darren was tall, played football, which is a big thing in Texas, and he was a hard, motivated worker. But he was also kind of nerdy, and the blonde bombshell that was Darlie stole his heart. He doted on her and loved to show her off. Darlie at the time is described as sweet, thoughtful, she's a giving person. She always loved animals, babies, her family. Darren proposed to her on a ski lift in Purgatory, Colorado, and when she turned 18, with both sets
It's the same place he took Cindy Black to.
of parents' full support and love, they got married. And I will say it's a little ironic that they get married in Purgatory. It'll make sense a little later. After the Routiers get married, they moved to Dallas. They were making pretty good money at their job and the computer hardware business. They
At Colplex.
both worked for a company called Qplex.
Colplex.
Darren attends tech training school and in his free time has started their own business. And
Why don't you do some research into when Darren graduated from the tech school and had a graduation party, and do some research on Darlie's reaction to that. Do some research on about how this isn't the first time she claimed a man attacked her. Do some research on that.
in their department called Tesneck. A friend that had
It's Tesneek. And Darren will tell you that. Tesneek.
worked with them at Qplex named Barbara Jovel, who will appear several times in this story, comes over to Tesneck with them when they open the business. They move their business into a building in 1992. Barbara met Darlie when she was about 16 or 17 while she was engaged to Darren, and she was actually Darlie's maid of honor. So at one time they were really close.
They were really close up to the time that Darlie was convicted. Remember, Beja Jovel is the one that Darlie trusted. She told everyone to leave the hospital room. She told Barbara Jovel to go and get her sex toys from the house. She was embarrassed about the sex toys, and she wanted Beja, to go and get those. And when they did find those sex toys, all right, because Barbara never got them, she said, "I will not apologize for loving my husband." Well, you know, with sex toys that are designed for pleasure for women, that's not usually because you're loving your husband. Not usually. That's for some little Me time.
When they open that business, or when they open that building, they hire one of Darlie's sisters, Dana, along with Barbara. But during the time of the crime, they're not as friendly as they once were. We believe Barbara had gotten jealous that she did not make more money or was not given more percentage of the company that Darlie and Darren.
Right, because Barbara was teaching them and they didn't hardly pay her. But it's not jealousy. When you're working for someone and they pay you shit and take all the credit, it's not jealousy, that's annoyance. But nothing ever happened to their friendship until she got convicted.
Had opened. And as we stated, she's not going to testify the same character witness that all of the other Routier friends testified to at Darlie's defense. At Tessneck, Darlie...
And all of Darlie's other friends weren't there with her on a daily basis in the house. Weren't there doing cocaine with her. Weren't there when she's talking about almost cheating on Darren. They weren't there for that.
Works helping with administrative work like bookkeeping, and she has happy memories of her and Darren sitting in their small apartment, drilling holes and crimping wires while she was pregnant. After the Routier's Jamaican honeymoon, Darlie gives birth to her first child, Devin, just 9 months after saying I do. Then she quickly gets pregnant again and delivers their second child, Damon, shortly after moving into their home that they had built in Rowlett, Texas in 1993. At this time, Rowlett had a population of about 45,000 and was considered a safe community where lots of young families chose to raise their children. It's close to Lake Ray Hubbard. It's an upscale eastern suburb of Dallas, and their house on Eagle Drive had a fountain in the front. It's a beautiful home, and Darlie enjoyed being a homemaker. They had made it. They had a boat, a jaguar, a spa, and as we find out, $16,000 of Armani drapes hanging in their living
Those Armani drapes are actually $12,000, and they're still a part of the house today.
room. They're a young couple doing really well, and they go on to have a third son named Drake. Darlie is doing the books for Tessneck when she can. She worked daily until Drake was born and then brought the baby to work often. So it's not like she's just some, bimbo housewife. I mean, I'm a housewife and all I do is watch like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Darlie, she's very smart and she's very loyal, and we can tell this by her background. Darlie liked having the boys, and she liked welcoming the neighborhood kids into her home. They called it the Nintendo house. Darlie's described as a generous person, paying for people's trips and meals, buying gifts. She donated and volunteered. And everybody loved the Routier home, and she loved having everybody there.
Where are these videos at with everybody there?
According to family, she gave correct discipline to her boys. No one ever saw her do more than swat them on the butt or pinch their cheeks.
That's a lie, because the people from the pawn shop testified that she was cussing at them and yelling at them. So don't say no one ever saw it. Read your testimony.
But both boys were kind and well-behaved. Dion, who's Darlie's brother-in-law, describes Darlie as a good mom, quote, "She was always patient, reasonable, and spoke with them." He went on to say Darlie was a good wife. She loved Darren. One of the neighbors, William Grouch, who will testify, he has an 8-year-old son, Jonathan.
Grouch? William Grouch? Can you read? Read it. It's not William Grouch. It's Gorsuch.
Who played with the Routier kids. They played between the backyards.
Yeah, Jonathan wanted to spend the night there that night. And Darlie told him no, because Devin and Damon had gotten in trouble for splashing around making a mess in their steam house. So, no, Jonathan, you can't stay tonight. The kids can play with you until it's time to come in, but once they come in, they're punished, and you can't spend the night for something they did earlier in the day. Instead of giving them a timeout when they did it, they were allowed to play until bedtime, until time to come in. And no, Jonathan, you can't spend the night tonight.
Side yards and rode their bikes down the street they lived on, Eagle Drive. Parents would keep tabs on the kids, but they were not constantly watched. And I feel like this was normal for the 90s. I am actually almost down to the exact same day, the same age as Devin, their oldest child. We lived in this area. We lived in a safe suburb outside of Dallas. And the rule of our house was when it started getting dark and the street lamps went on, you went home.
She's right about that. Even when I was coming up, when the street lights come on, you went home.
So 1 month before the crime, Darlie developed suicidal ideations. Darlie wrote in her diary around this time that although she had everything in life she could want, she felt like something was missing, and she had a lot of responsibility. Darlie had recently started weaning Drake, and as some of our listeners may know, this can cause your hormones to go haywire. Darlie testifies that the ideations lasted about 4 days, after which she got her first period since giving birth and immediately felt back to normal.
PTSD.
Another thing bothering Darlie around this time was trying to lose the baby weight from having Drake, so she was on a low dose of drugs called fen-phen, which some people can assume is a crazy methamphetamine, but fen-phen side effects, especially at Darlie's dose, are not similar to what you would expect.
Well, tell us why they pulled it off the market then.
From an amphetamine. Jones has experience with all of these things.
Well, I know Jones breastfed me, and I think that you took fen-phen. Is that right, Jones?
I did take fen-phen. It was a few years after you had been born because I was having such a hard time taking off the baby weight. It works. For me, it was a good drug. I lost about 20 pounds on it. I'd take it again. Although
I wish I could have
off the
it.
market because of some cardiac side effects. It did not make me crazy. You know, I think postpartum depression is a real and diagnosable illness. It's in the DSM-5. When you're weaning a baby, it's either easy or it's really hard. If Drake is crying out during the night, Darlie's milk will leak, and that can be really annoying.
Yeah. It's really hard. It's really hard. So Drake would move around in his crib at night, and somehow that only woke Darlie up. It didn't wake Darren or anybody else or even Drake, but that would wake Darlie up. So instead of tending to her child that is fidgety in his crib, she just gets frustrated and says, "To hell with it. I'm not going to sleep up here and be woke up. I'm just going to leave him up there with Darren, and I'm going to go down and sleep on the couch." Now, people don't realize that she had been sleeping on that couch for a week before the murders happened. Instead of tending to your baby and find out what the problem is, why he's a restless sleeper, just leave him there, fuck him. I'm going downstairs, out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind.
According to family friend and coworker Barb, and only Barb, around the time before and after Drake was born in late 95, Darlie had told her that she would get in these moods where she felt weird and strange and would sometimes get upset and depressed, and Darlie didn't understand why. Here's an excerpt from Darlie's diary. September 7th, 1995. I have had 2 dreams about death in the past several months. Both times I was hesitant to go, but when I did, it was such a wonderful feeling, one that you cannot describe, and both times I felt I was going to be with the Lord.
Andrea Yates had similar thoughts.
I don't know what these dreams are telling me. I only know that I'm not yet ready to leave my wonderful life here. Time will tell my story. For now I will close, but tomorrow is another day. Let it be a good one. Barb also said that Darlie had a temper, and when Darren wasn't helping out enough, her anxiety and depression were taking out on him. Again, this is according to Barb.
Yeah, and this podcast is according to you.
Darlie had written in her journal about these feelings and spoke intently with Barb after she contemplated suicide 1 month before the crime. Barb had even told Darren that if they didn't address the issue, that something bad was going to happen. In his testimony, Darren will say that if he thought Darlie truly needed help, he would have gotten it for her.
Looks like Barb was right.
A lot of people say that Darlie attempted suicide, but from the evidence, we're going to call it an ideation and not.
No, she didn't attempt suicide. But she was thinking about it. I don't want you to grow up and see a miserable person every time you look at me. We could just stop that at I don't want you to grow up.
Attempt. She had contemplated and wrote about her feelings and expressed them to Darren, but she never took actual steps to attempt. She had thought about taking over-the-counter sleeping pills, but she never actually did, and she called her husband immediately.
Darren wouldn't even have knew about the pills had not Domain, the dog, dragged one of the wrappers out from under the bed. That's how Darren found out that she actually had pills open.
What a psychologist who will later testify on Darlie's behalf describes his cry for help to Darren. Also around this time, Darlie...
A cry for help. And no one listened. Just as no one listened when she was 8 years old. No one was listening to her cry for help all her life. But everybody listened. On June 6, 1996, she was finally heard. Heard her loud and clear that day, didn't they?
Darren had withdrawn several loans for the Jag, the boat, the spot, and $10,000.
$5,000. $5,000 is what he was asking for. As a matter of fact, he was asking for that $5,000. They say for a trip. But actually, they wanted to get Dana a new truck. That's what they wanted.
Shortly before the crime, Darren was denied a loan in the amount of $5,000 to give Darlie a trip to Mexico. I don't know about you guys, but I don't spend $5,000 on a trip, so I don't know why he wanted that much.
Well, it probably cost about $3,000 for the trip, and the only reason that they were denied is because he had too much rotating credit, too much revolving credit.
Well, and I'm just curious, Mom, at this time, is it common to take out loans? Like, is it kind of how we use credit cards today? Because who would approve a loan for $5,000 for a vacation?
I don't think so. I was well taught by my father not to spend money that I don't have. And so I used to keep a journal of everything that I charged to my credit card because I was trying to build a credit record. And so I think because their business was up and down, they would use these loans to go from a lull back to a high, pay the loan back, life would be good, then it'd drop again, they'd get another loan.
So it's kind of like using a credit card.
Up and down seesaw thing.
But yeah, it's like using a credit card, but they're having to go in and speak to a loan officer every time. Like that's, I don't know, that's, again, like you said, I was taught to not spend money I don't have, so.
Well, I've seen your credit card bill, I don't believe that.
Oh, burn!
So during the 2 months before the crime, someone is calling the routiers at home. Darlie would answer, speaking into silence on the other end until she finally hung up.
Well, where are the record of these calls?
This happened a lot.
Where are the record of these calls? The only one who's saying that is Darlie Routier. Just like you said earlier, the only one who's saying that is Barbara Jovell. The only one who's saying that is Darlie Routier.
Well, unusual, Darlie assumed it was neighborhood kids playing pranks. But considering what happens in June, this sends a shiver down my spine. In the weeks leading up to the crime, neighbors and family friends had noticed an unfamiliar black car in the neighborhood. The family friend and neighbor both state the black car looked to be surveilling the Routier house about a week prior to the crime.
Yeah, wouldn't it look to be surveilling the house? Remember, also, they had a $6,000 beautiful fountain at the end of their yard. And they lived in a half a cul-de-sac. And it was common for people to slow down and look at the fountain. And to look at the fountain, it could appear that you're looking at the house. But what was the make and model of this black car? What was the plate number of this black car? Now that I've described a reason for people to possibly slow down and take a look, where do you go from there?
The driver was looking into the garage. After seeing this car once again...
Now, the person who said that the driver was looking into the garage was Beja and Helena. right? The ones that Sully goes on and says, well, I wouldn't give much credit to their testimony now. They keep saying that they had a falling out, but there was no falling out. But on this part, they're going to listen to their testimony.
The day before the crime in an alleyway next to the Routier garage where the children played, but there's no record of police responding to this information.
Because police can't respond to the information if they don't get a call about it. They never call the police on about that. The police ain't responding to your shit either.
Darlie shrugged this off like the phone calls, but a week later, 2 Routiers will be dead.
Alright, so I'm going to get into the day of the crime. Most of this comes from testimony from within the family. At this point, we have Darlie and Darren. They live in their house in Rowlett. They have 3 boys. Her sister and one of her friends, they're kind of on the in and out, work at their company. And so Darlie, the boys are out of school, and so Darlie is at home with the boys, I think for the next few weeks. The day of the crime, Darren's car is in the shop. He takes Darlie's Pathfinder to work. However, Barbara Jovell will also drop her mother off, Helena, who was helping Darlie do housework that morning, and then Barbara would go on to work. Helena, who will testify to, well, a lot, is going to be the colloquial Karen in this story.
Isn't it nice that a lot of Helena's testimony was done outside of the view of the jury? You know, that judge had Alzheimer's and he wouldn't do anything right for the defense, would he? He didn't feel that Helena's testimony had anything to do with the murders.
She's from Poland and needs a translator at trial, and I think either she truly does not like Darlie, or the translation is just not coming through correctly. Darlie would pay Helena for 3 days' work around the house.
$5 an hour.
And this is the first time they've made this arrangement, although they had spent some time together in the past, because Helena is Darlie's good friend's mother, so...
Darlie's good friend's mother.
Helena, who we're going to take with a grain of salt, will testify that while Darlie was...
Why would you take Helena with a grain of salt for? You don't take anything Darlie says with a grain of salt, do you?
Holding 8-month-old Drake, his blankets had become wrapped around his face and that he wasn't breathing. So I know in some countries they don't swaddle. Also, when I read...
In any country, you shouldn't swaddle until your child is sweating and turning blue.
The babysitter's testimony, she said that the baby liked having his blankies up around his face. And at this time, he's really kind of past the major SIDS 1 to 6 month period. This is her 3rd child. I think that she has let go of some of those fears that first-time mothers have. Drake is swaddled with a blanket kind of over him, and he lays in the living room like that when Darlie is relaxing.
She was in his hands. She was holding Drake when this happened.
Not only that, but Drake is, like I said, I think he's 7 to 8 months at this time. He's probably pulling up. He's pulling up on the glass table. He had
probably
fallen and hit his head. Again, like this is normal for babies that are trying to walk. And then she also will testify that the baby fell out of his high chair that day. And again, we're going to take her story with a grain of salt.
Why? Why take it with a grain of salt?
And let me tell you a little story about when we were in Terralingua. It was me, my husband, my dad, and our 2-year-old. And my dad, I asked him the next morning, how did everything go? And he said, oh my gosh, I was at dinner and I turned my eye for a second to fill out the ticket, leave a tip and sign. And Mikey was rocking in his high chair to the point where he fell over. And my dad, the next day, he's like, I freaked out and I signed the check and I got out of there really fast. And
well, let's just listen to that little story, okay? She said he turned his head for a second to sign a tip on a check, right? For a second. But she also says he was rocking in his high chair. She knew he was rocking it. Why would you turn away if your child is rocking in the high chair? Why don't you get them to stop before you turn away?
I told him, I said, Dad, don't feel bad. I mean, little boys are crazy.
Even though he shouldn't feel bad about that, I'm just saying. You just got to listen to what people say. He was rocking in his high chair. So that means he wasn't turned away for more than just a second. Because you can only rock once in a second.
But they fall out of high chairs. They fall while they're trying to walk.
She's absolutely right. I agree with this. You know, there was, in my son's case, when he was looked at because Braden came up with a small fracture in 2015, and they both told the police that he found his way up to the top of his crib and he fell out of his crib. But that led to someone being looked at for abuse.
You know, it's kind of normal. So a lot of people take Helena's testimony in the opposite direction and they give her a lot of credit. However, being the mother of a boy, I kind of understand that a lot of this is fairly normal. Let's go on. After the boys eat lunch, they go outside to play. Barbara had arrived back to the house by herself around 5:15. She opens a beer, but her mother is ready to leave. Helena also says Darlie was pacing, according to her, but in Darren's testimony, Darren says that Darlie was just putting all the laundry away that her and Helena had done that day. Helena states Darlie leaves the vacuum between the wine rack and the pantry, and she testifies to where this vacuum is because this will be important later. Darlie had dinner cooking, she had a chicken soup, and so the two women go ahead and leave, Barbara and her mom, Helena. Barbara says when they got in the car, they saw a black sports car on the street.
That's the first I've heard of it being a sports car. You see, no one has ever gave a make and model of that car or a plate number. They see everything, but not this.
And someone got in and sped off. And Helena,
if they got in it, where were they coming from? Were they visiting somebody? They were out of the car, got in and sped out. So think about it like this. This is an alleged intruder, right? So he's going to park his car in front of the house and get out of the car?
This is the police report that you heard Johnson talk about earlier. Darlie's sister Dana had ridden home with Darren from work that day, and they arrived back at the house around 5:30, kind of passing Barb and Helena as they go. So at this time we have Dana, Darlie, Darren, and the three boys in the house, and they sit down to have a family dinner. After dinner, Darren goes out to fix the gate because it was dragging on the ground.
Darlie told him to go out there. Don't just say Darren goes out there. Darlie asked him to go out there to mess with the gate. And here's something interesting. They say they had a large dinner, right? A large dinner. But if you look at the autopsy, the contents of Devin's stomach was nothing.
So he just was kind of sawing the bottom off so that it wouldn't get stuck when the boys tried to come in and out of it. And
it still required force to open and close, as the police testified to.
a neighbor will testify that he sees Darren outside fixing the gate. At this point, Darlie asks Darren to take Dana home around 9:30 or so.
Now let's look at the reasons why Darlie wanted her to take Dana home, keeping in mind that Dana had been there for about a week. Darlie says she wanted Darren to take Dana home because she wasn't feeling well. And that's the only time in her testimony that she said she wasn't feeling well that day. Dana says she left because she wanted to be with her boyfriend. I think she left because they were fighting, as Beja said. Beja told me, not on the stand, that when she got there, that Darlie and Darren were in the kitchen fighting, arguing. They had been arguing all week. So she stepped out into the back, and Damon was back there playing, in the yard with a little stick looking sad. And she asked him, "Yeah, what's wrong, Damon? What's going on?" And he said, "Well, can I spend a night with you tonight, Beja?" And Beja was trying to tell him that, she had to work, and, you couldn't spend. Why would you want to spend a night with me? And she said that Damon looked up at her and said, "Because Mommy's being mean to me." That's what Beja told me.
So, and remember, the Jag is in the shop, so Darren has to use Darley's car. When he gets back to the home, he organizes for a garage sale they plan on having, and he goes in and he hides.
Yeah, garage sale, loan of $5,000, sell me your jewelry for $10,000. Looks like somebody's needing some money.
The stuff that he wants to keep that he doesn't want Darley to know about. Also, at this point, we would really recommend going onto one of our social media places or just typing into Google the map of the house, because this becomes extremely important to the case. So it's a hot June in Texas. So Darren had raised one of the screened windows inside the garage about 6 to 8 inches.
Wrong. The reason that the garage window was open is because Dana opened it. Dana opened it so she could smoke and flip her ashes out there. Dana lives with survivor's guilt today because she left that window open.
The screen is properly attached. Darren closed their garage door and locked it, but the backyard gate did not have a lock on it. The door between the garage and the laundry room was not locked, but the back sliding glass door, the front door, and all the windows except the one that Darren had cracked open are locked in the home.
And Darren did not set the alarm that they have. Even though Darren today owns Netcom Communications, where they do put alarms in houses and businesses and stuff, he didn't set his own alarm on the night that it most needed to be set according to this case.
They had a security alarm that, however, they didn't have it set because it kept going off and waking up the baby, so they weren't using it at the time.
I don't know where they heard that the alarm was going off and waking up the baby. That's the first I've heard of that.
Their full-blooded Persian cat is in his kennel in the family room. So at this time, the Routiers are also breeding Persian cats.
They are not breeding Persian cats. They're not doing that. They were thinking about breeding Domain, studying him out.
And so this is the kennel that you'll see in photographs later, but their full-blooded Persian cat is in his kennel in the family room, and Darley and the boys are laying down there, and Damon is playing with a kitten, and they're all watching TV.
I don't think Damon is playing with a kitten.
When Darren comes inside, Drake is on Darley's chest, so he takes the baby to feed him and put him to sleep in his crib upstairs. He also grabs a pillow and blanket from the primary bedroom that they sleep in, and he gives her pillow and blanket on the couch. They have a conversation, and then he heads to bed around 1:30 a.m.
Well, let's talk about that conversation. Look up Affidavit of Darren Routier. Let's talk about that conversation because there's a couple different stories that come out about it.
An hour later, a 911 call is made.
So we want to just talk about the boys really quick. The oldest child, Devin Rush, was born in June 1989. He was described as a jokester, funny. He loved his dad and their matching jewelry. He loved water and could swim from birth, and he loved music, especially Gangster's Paradise, which he loved to sing along to. He loved his
you just said he loved to sing along to. The song Gangster's Paradise is written by Coolio, and it's about death in the streets. Even my mom doesn't know what's going on in the kitchen. And they were criticized for choosing that as a funeral song. You know. And they said, why would you let your boys listen to something? Look at the lyrics of look at the lyrics. Why would you let your boys listen to something like that? And they said, oh, they didn't know the words. They just liked the beat. But here, this lady saying that Devin would sing along to it. So which is it? Because the Routiers claim they didn't know the words to that. They just liked the beat of the music.
Their brothers, he was calm, sweet, polite, and smart. Devin had just finished first grade and gotten out of school for the summer when the crime occurred. The middle child, Damon Christian, was born in February of 1991. He was described as smart, but also more stubborn and moody. He also loved to swim, and he also loved his brothers. Drake was almost 8 months old when the crime happened and was described as a happy baby who also loved his siblings. I want to put a trigger warning in here because we're about to play a clip from a 911 call. And after that, we're going to describe the crime, which some listeners may find disturbing. So, take care.
911, what is your emergency? Ma'am?
They just stabbed me and my kids, my little boys.
Who did?
My little boy's dying.
Stand by for medical emergency. Unknown medical emergency. 5801
Oh my
Eagle
God. Oh
Drive.
my God.
Ma'am, I'm trying to get an ambulance to you.
Oh
Hang
my
on a
God.
minute.
My babies are dying. I thought he was dead. Oh my God.
Maybe
Who
it's a
was
possible
breathing?
stabbing.
Oh my God. What do we do? Oh my God. They just stabbed me and my kids, my little boys.
Who did?
My little boy is dying.
Stand by for medical emergency. Unknown.
Somebody who came in here and intentionally did it, Darren. Get to that part.
Medical emergency. 5801
Oh
Eagle
my
Drive.
God. Oh my God. My
Ma'am,
babies
I'm
are
trying to get an
dying.
ambulance to you. Hang on a
I
minute.
thought he was dead. Oh my God. Who's breathing?
Maybe a possible
Oh my
stabbing.
God. What do we do?
Darlie asked 911.
What do we do?
At this point, 911 believes there is only one child and has dispatched first responders. You can hear Darlie in the background say,
I saw them. I don't know who it was.
but it's hard to hear on the tape. Darlie just keeps repeating, oh my God.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. My babies are dead.
Instead of going over to assist and help with the boys, she just keeps saying, oh my God, and holds that green towel to her own neck.
911 realizes there are two children at this point. An officer named Waddell responds to the call, but he does not radio into the 911 operator. He's only a minute or two from the scene.
Oh my God. My baby. My babies are dead.
She's talking about Devin here, who took about 5 minutes to bleed out.
Damon, hold on.
She says her first child's been
I
stabbed.
saw them, Darren. Oh my God. He came in here, Darren. I don't know who it was. We gotta find out who it was.
You're going to have to slow down.
Oh my God. I'm
Calm
talking
down.
to my
Just talk to
babies.
me.
They're dying.
What's going on?
Somebody came in while I was sleeping. Me and my little boys were sleeping downstairs. Some man came in, stabbed me, stabbed my babies. I woke up. I was fine. He ran out through the garage, threw the knife down. My babies are dying. They're dead. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. What? No, my husband, he just ran downstairs. He's helping me, but they're dying. Oh my God, they're dead.
Okay. How many little boys is it? Is it
Two.
two
There's
boys?
two of them. There's two of them. Oh my God, who would do this? I feel really bad. I think I'm dying.
Here, Darlie and Darren sound like they say the word Karen, maybe asking each other if one of them should run across the street to get their neighbor
Darlie literally screams, Karen! They don't seem like they're saying it. She's calling.
who was a nurse. Darren will go get Karen after Officer Waddell is on the scene. Darlie says her husband just ran downstairs. Remember, it's only been about 2 minutes since the crime, and he's helping. We believe Darren is attempting CPR right now, but without luck. And Darlie says,
They're dying. They're dead. When are they going to be here? When are they going to be here?
Ma'am, they're on their way.
I just got to sit here forever. Oh my God, who would do this? Who would do this?
Ma'am, how old are your boys?
7 and 5. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, he's dead.
here 911 asks if their names are Darlie and Darren.
Yes, please hurry. God, they're taking forever.
Look for a rag.
The second officer, named Walling, is now on the scene.
They killed our babies.
Lay down.
No, he ran out. They ran out in the garage. I was sleeping.
911 does not realize that officers Waddell and Walling are already on the scene, and Darlie's talking to them about the perp fleeing through the garage.
Y'all look out in the garage. Look out in the garage. They left
Yeah, go away from the scene. Go away from the scene. Go away from Damon. He's still alive.
a knife laying on.
There's a knife? Don't touch anything.
I already touched it. I picked it up.
Now Officer Waddell does not realize that Darlie is speaking to 911.
Is it
Where's the part where Waddell went into the bathroom and threw up? Where's that at on the 911 call?
there anybody out there yet?
Here 911 is speaking to Waddell, not to Darlie.
I don't know. I was sleeping.
Okay, ma'am, listen, there's a police officer at your front door. Is your front door unlocked?
Darlie is now confused because officers are already inside.
Yes, ma'am, but where's the ambulance? They're barely breathing. If you don't get here, they're gonna be dead. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Okay, just sit down.
We believe the police officer is now speaking to Darlie.
What about you?
Oh my god, oh my god. Who would do this? Why would they do this?
Well, okay, listen, ma'am. I need you to let the officers in the front door.
Again, 911 doesn't know that officers are on the scene. Officer Waddell tells Darlie to look for a rag, but Darlie says,
They killed our babies.
and he tells her to sit down because of the blood pouring out of her neck.
Lay down.
No, he ran out. They ran out the garage. I was sleeping. Y'all look out in the garage.
Where's the part where she said somebody intentionally came in here and did it, Darren? Where's it at?
Here, y'all is referring to Officers Waddell and Wally.
There's a knife? Don't touch it.
I already picked it up, touched it.
So Darlie did mention the knife first.
She's responding to 911 here, and then Waddell asks if Darlie notices if anything is missing. Darlie says,
Oh my god, why would they do this?
Nothing's gone, Miss Routier?
Why would they do this?
Need to let the police.
Nobody said nothing's gone, Miss Routier. She said there's nothing touched.
Officers in the front door.
Now it's 4 minutes into the 911 call. It's hard to tell who 911 is speaking to, who Darlie's replying to, what Waddell is saying. 911 is a little confused still if it's two boys and keeps asking Darlie to open the front door. It's unintelligible on the tape, but 911 then asks Darlie not to touch anything once again.
His knife was laying over there and I already picked it up.
It's okay. It's all right.
God, I bet if we could have gotten the prints, maybe. Somebody intentionally walked in here and did it, Darren. There's nothing touched.
There you go. Now that part right there. If you listen to the actual 911 tape, you can see her demeanor changes when she makes that statement. I feel like Darren is accusing her at that point. Because her demeanor, she goes from, oh my God, they're dying, oh my God, there's blah, 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 to, somebody came in here and intentionally did it, Darren. And then back to, there's nothing touched. Go listen to the tape, how she says that.
Okay,
There's
ma'am.
nothing touched.
Ma'am, is the police officer...
Yes.
Okay, go talk to him.
His knife was laying over there and I already picked it up. God,
His knife. She wanted to make sure to say his knife.
I bet if we could have just gotten the prints, maybe. Somebody who did it intentionally walked in here and did it, Darren.
As Officer Waddell comes onto the scene, it is pure chaos. Darren runs out to the fountain covered in blood and screaming, someone just killed my family. As Waddell enters the home, he sees Darlie in the entryway speaking to 911.
Now wait a minute, you missed the part where Waddell let the intruder walk out the front door. Well, what happened was Waddell pulled up. He saw Darren out in the yard. He heard that there was a stabbing there. He drew his weapon on Darren and escorted Darren back into the house. Now, the crime fighter would tell you this is when the intruder went out, walked away from the scene. Except for you have Gorsuch across the street watching the whole thing, watching Darren get brought into the house. No one came out. He had a view of the whole side of the house. He could see the front, the side, and the back. No one came out, and there were no strange cars in the area.
He follows Darren into the family room and sees Devin, who appears to be dead. The other child, Damon, is still alive when Waddell approaches, lying between the family room and the entryway where the base of the stairs are located.
Is this before or after he went in the bathroom and threw up?
He is laying face down with his little head tilted towards Darlie, clinging to life. Darlie, who doesn't know CPR, tells Damon to hold on, honey, and Damon replies, "Okay, Mommy." These are his last words.
He replies, "Okay, Mommy," with mortal stab wounds.
Darlie tells Waddell that an intruder left through the garage, so Waddell's first priority is to clear the scene. While he cannot do a full sweep without backup, he does walk through the kitchen, stepping over broken glass, and shines his flashlight into the garage. He sees no one and rejoins the family, telling Darren to go get their neighbor Karen, who is a nurse. EMTs have now arrived at the Routier home. EMT Byford declares 6-year-old Devin dead, and he will be left at the scene until morning, as his body is now evidence. Devin had abrasions on his hands, face, back, and legs, and broken blood vessels around his neck. He was stabbed twice in his chest. His pulmonary artery was hit, filling his lungs with blood. When his father attempted CPR, air and blood spurted out through the holes in his chest. Devin bled out within 5 to 7 minutes, and his official cause of death was sharp force trauma and exsanguination, which means severe blood loss. Darren doesn't give CPR to Damon because he's afraid that flipping Damon onto his back will cause more damage. EMT Colby goes to Damon, but when he turns him over to do CPR, he watches him take his last breath. Damon is rushed into an ambulance to begin life-saving measures and to get him out of the chaos that has ensued in the Routier home. 5-year-old Damon is declared dead on arrival at Baylor Hospital. Damon had 4 stab wounds and 2 incisions to his back and shoulders. He was able to walk and speak, but died about 10 minutes after the attack. His cause of death was also sharp force trauma and exsanguination. By the time Darren returns with Karen to the house, it has been declared a crime scene, and he cannot re-enter. EMTs give Drake to Karen, who they know personally. Darren stays with Darlie as EMT Kojak attends to her injuries on the front porch of the house. Darlie is wearing a blood-soaked nightshirt, and Darren asks her where her panties are. Darlie doesn't know, because she was wearing them when she went to sleep. She's then loaded into an ambulance and also taken to the Baylor Hospital in Dallas.
Around 4:45 a.m., Darlie is taken to surgery. We'll get technical with her injuries in episode 2, but for now we're going to just use layman's terms. Her throat has been slashed. She had a stab wound to her right forearm, bruising up and down both of her arms, and blood under her fingernails. She was wearing a locket that was embedded in the neck wound.
That locket was not embedded in the neck wound. It had dry blood that coagulated around it, but it was not embedded in the neck wound.
Given a partial rape kit, and it's negative for semen. Partial means vaginal swabs are taken. A forensic rape exam includes bagging the hands and preserving any evidence on the body. This is not done. If you're going to do a full forensic rape exam, you're taking clippers and combs to scrape any evidence from the victim onto white sheets of paper, which are saved and bagged as evidence. They can take blood and other samples.
They took samples and sent them over to Baylor and told Baylor that if any further testing needed to be done, because Baylor was going, they took them and sent them over to Parkland. And that's where they were going to look at it a little bit deeper, and if they find any evidence that there could have been a rape, they were supposed to send it back. They didn't find any evidence.
This full rape kit was not performed on Darlie.
It wasn't performed on Darlie because there was no reason to perform one on Darlie. They did the initial testing to see if there's any semen or anything like that, and there was none. So they didn't need to do a full test.
No, her panties are missing, and she also states that she felt pressure in her pelvic area. Darlie's given a tox screen, which found only fen-phen in her system. After Darlie is released from the hospital on June the 8th, police escort the Routiers to the police station to answer more questions and write their statements. This makes them late for the vigil at the funeral home.
And if you read their first statements that they actually wrote out, they omit the fact that they talked about having a separation that night. They omit that. They leave that out. Danelle said that it was irrelevant. First, she tried to tell me, well, she didn't remember everything, blah, blah, blah. I said she remembered making chicken soup and feeding popcorn. But Danelle tells me that the reason they left the whole part about them arguing and asking for separation is that it was irrelevant. They omit it completely from their first statements that they were talking about a separation that night, because what would it look like to the police if you're having a marital disagreement that leads to talk of separation and an hour later your kids come up missing or dead? Why did they leave that out?
Darlie's mom had bought her a black short-sleeve dress. Darlie wanted a long-sleeve dress to cover up the bruises.
Oh, that's ridiculous. The bruises that she's talking about that they say were up and down her arms when she went into the hospital, that's incorrect. And Dr. Alexandro Santos, he testified that those bruises were something that occurred 24 to 48 hours after the crime. After. That's what the medical testimony is.
But that's not what Mama Key bought. The attendees witnessed Darlie's extensive bruising. The funeral director leads
No, they did not witness extensive bruising.
Darlie and Darren into the chapter. The funeral director leads Darlie and Darren into the chapel first to view the boys' bodies, and Darlie's wails are heard by other visitors awaiting the viewing. The vigil was held that late afternoon, and the boys' bodies were buried the next morning. Darren placed a pocket knife in the casket that the boys shared.
Isn't that nice of them to put a knife in the casket of two kids that were murdered by a knife? They also put tarot cards in there.
And they were buried holding hands.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jones.
That following weekend, on June 14th, Darlie and Darren had a prayer service held at the gravesite, where a pastor officiated and friends and family came to mourn the death of the boys.
The pastor was married to one of their family.
That graveside service was recorded. A microphone from Rowlett PD was placed in a bush near the grave, and the attendees and the pastor testified that Darlie was upset and cried throughout the prayer service. Devin had wanted nothing more in the world than to be 7 years old, and he asked Darlie every day if he was 7 yet. So his Aunt Dana suggested celebrating his birthday at the graveside. The family changed into more casual clothing and returned to the side of the grave to celebrate a 7-year-old's birthday. It was Dana's idea to use silly strings.
But it was Darlie's idea to spray it. They keep saying that. I keep hearing supporters say, it was Dana's idea. What if it was Dana's idea to snort a line of coke off of the tombstone? Could Darlie choose to do that or not?
Since Devin loved it and played Gangster's Paradise by Coolio, which was one of Devin's favorite songs to dance to. The Routiers had called the media to film the birthday party, thinking it would help kids in the neighborhood feel safer. On this news footage, you can see Darlie's...
They called... They did more than call. They needed compensation. And they got compensation for that, for the story. But here's the graveside interview, right? Where they could take that opportunity to say something about the intruder, what he looked like, what happened, to be on the lookout. But she doesn't do that. She just says that gossip is, unfortunately, the worst evil in the whole world. Standing next to her two kids that were murdered's grave.
Spraying silly string and smacking gum. Mama Darlie had given Darlie gum because her mouth was dry, which was probably due to her crying or a side effect of the high dose antidepressants she'd been on since.
She wasn't on a high dose of it. She was on 0.25 milligrams of Xanax. But if you read Darlie's testimony, she says, everybody kept giving me pills. Everybody kept giving me pills. So she was chewing on a gum because she had dry mouth from all the pills she was taking. But there is no pill that erases grief. None.
The murders. Barbara Jovell went to the birthday celebration, but not the prayer service. The prosecution states that she is Darlie's best friend, which is simply not true.
Oh, Darlie says she's her best friend. Why would it not be true? She was a bridesmaid. Your best friends are your bridesmaids.
Darlie, Darren, and Barbara had a bit of a falling out because Barbara thought she should be earning more hourly wage or be sharing in the profits. And during testimony, Barbara states Darlie was crying fake tears, acting for the camera. And
Exactly. Because that's what happened.
only holding pictures of the boys when she was being filmed. She said Darlie was putting on quite the show. Actually, Darlie's best friend is Melanie Waite, who will testify for the defense during the trial. 4 days later,
Melanie Waite wasn't in her wedding. Melanie Waite wasn't trusted to watch the kids. Melanie Waite wasn't trusted to clean the house.
Darlie would be arrested on 2 counts of murder.
At approximately 10:20 p.m. this evening, investigators from the Rowlett Police Department arrested Darlie Routier. We believe that the white male suspect, described by Darlie Routier as the man that attacked her and murdered her children, never existed. We also believe that the wounds present on Darlie Routier were self-inflicted.
I swear I did not murder my children. I swear. So we will see you guys on the next episode. We hope you guys stay safe. Been spending most of their lives living in a gangster's paradise.
Why would you go singing such an unfortunate song like that? Look up the lyrics to Gangster's Paradise from Coolio.
So this is going to be the end of episode 1. We originally were going to drop all 3 episodes at once, but we have decided that we want to go ahead and put out more content for you guys. And so we're going to release these one at a time, which is going to make it
Which is going to make it a lot of fun for me to debunk.